webinar Verdantas is hosting today. My name is George Pasty. I have been a regional sales manager with Verdantas for over 5 years. I've been in the material master data management space for over 15 years. I have a background in supply chain and engineering and supply chain and product. So I've spent my career across multiple manufacturing organizations developing what I think is a sound approach to material master data management. Before I review the agenda, I just want to get a little housekeeping out of the way up front. If you have questions, please enter them into the question panel on your WebEx screen, and we'll answer those at the end of the session. So today's webinar, we're going to talk about the challenges in approaching material master data management. We're going to talk about what some of the companies, leading companies in the industry are doing to address those challenges. What's the background need for an effective MDM solution? And then the why would I do it, the business case piece of it. And then we'll run through some examples of the value calculations, and then we'll just summarize with who Verdantas is. So to start out with the challenges, most of our clients are global 2,000 companies with large complex organizations with multiple locations, systems, business units, languages, often spread around the world. That creates a challenging environment to get a unified granular view of your material data. Same with the fact that many of those operating units have been adhering to their own standards, and so you don't have a standard coding system, so that compounds the problem, as well as the history of inconsistent item descriptions or poor descriptions that lend to challenges in getting a rolled up view of your enterprise material data. And often with these disparate organizations, there's a lack of ownership for the master data definition at the enterprise level. And because it is not supported at the enterprise, there's little incentive to provide standardized views of the data across the enterprise. And of course, with that lack of ownership leads to a lack of processes to all new data that's created. So the problem just continues to compound itself. And with the history of inconsistent systems and defined formats across these multiple systems, it just makes that visibility that much more difficult to get. So, just an example of one of our clients, 97 locations. They have close to a dozen different ERP, asset management, and PLM systems managing their data. So that constitutes multiple user groups of the data itself. They have over 350,000 unique materials, and that constitutes 1 million stocked items. And of course, they support 6 different languages. So this obviously is a complex environment, requires ownership at the top level of the organization if data standardization is going to come about. So how does this data come about? So what are leading edge companies doing in terms of being effective around material master data management? So the first thing is harmonizing your data, and the second is keeping it clean through ongoing data integrity initiatives. So it's the get it clean, keep it clean are the 2 legs of the stool. So what they're doing is they're rationalizing and enriching their master data for a number of different reasons, and that's to drive optimization of inventory, improve effectiveness of their maintenance engineers, sourcing professionals, buyers, etc. Provides a next level of visibility for material spend analytics and compliance. And what they found is that for large materials data consolidation projects, it can be very challenging trying to use traditional techniques or just manpower. So, we often see programs that have stalled out because either they're understaffed or the time takes so long that the results aren't achieved and are largely abandoned. So it can be very daunting to put a team of 4 people on trying to cleanse your data if you've got hundreds of thousands of parts, because that'll take years. So what we're finding is more and more of our customer base is embracing the notion that, particularly within the materials domain, it is one of the more complex material domains that you're going to encounter in your organization. And because of that, the generic solutions around MDM are not as effective as those that come with domain expertise. So we find more and more they are seeking out data partners who have that expertise in the material domain itself, especially materials. And these best-of-breed solutions help automate the master data harmonization process and governance process, and they, of course, have to be scalable, repeatable, consistent, and reduce both the risk and the cost of the project. So with regards to Verdantas, we have a harmonized platform that has been in the market for over 12 years, through which we've run over 100 million materials. And we've tuned it so that we can deal with high volumes of data. We can deal with applying standard coding systems. We can classify at high rates of speed. We can restructure descriptions so they're standardized across the whole database. We can help complete missing data. And we've tuned this for materials. We started with MRO, but we do direct materials as well. So as long as you can define what the thing is, we can process it. So the key here is applying automation to reduce the time and risk on these projects while increasing the accuracy and reducing costs. With regards to the keeping it clean piece, maintaining the data integrity, I always tell people this is not a destination, this is a journey. When you approach material master data management, it's not a one and done type of thing. You've got to keep the data clean going forward through the data governance processes and tools of your choice. But what we see is if you don't do that, your data will degrade at 15 to 20% a year, and in 2-3 years, you're back where you started. So it's very important to have that ongoing data governance processes to make sure that the data will stay in a pristine state and you can continue to drive the values on an annual basis out of that granular, consistent enterprise view of your data. Our integrity tool itself, and that's what it's called, our integrity platform for governance, it integrates directly through middleware to your ERP or asset management softwares or PLM systems to create a seamless environment whereby any new material requests can be integrated directly upon approval to the host system, to the transactional system. So what's this integrity allow? It allows quick and easy search, find, and compare. It allows you to extend preferred sources of supply across your enterprise so that people can get a multi-plant view of potential sources that are preferred by the organization. And of course, it's got to maintain a rigorous new parts introduction process so that any new parts that go through the process adhere to the business rules while making it as easy on the end user as possible to make that request. So what we're going to do now is take a quick minute just to see where our audience is in their material master data journey, and we're going to open up a quick survey. If you could take a few seconds and click where you're at in your journey, I'll summarize the results with you in a few minutes, or a few seconds. So if you haven't already, please do select an option. About 5 seconds left in the survey. Great, thank you for your participation all. Just in terms of the folks on the phone here, over half of you are in the learning stage for a project that's 12 or more months down the road. About a quarter of you are currently in a project that's underway, and another quarter of you are researching for a project in the next 6 months. So just to give you a flavor of that, it was interesting that there was a good grouping there of folks who are trying to educate themselves, and it sounds like there's a group that's already done a lot of that education as well. So thank you very much for participating in that, and we'll move on with the presentation. So why would people do this? What's the need for MMDM? What are the issues within the organization that you would want to do this? So the need for effective MDM is the need to have a measurable impact against many of the initiatives you may have in your organization that are driven by a high-quality, consistent enterprise view of your material data. The areas we see the most that are requiring this good data is in mergers and acquisitions. Many of our clients have inherited different databases of item masters, and now they need to consolidate them. ERP and EAM consolidations is another big driver. Organizations that are looking for better inventory reductions and visibility. Companies that are trying to take the next step in spend management and need that granular view. People who are looking to better address plant and equipment availability. Those that are seeking to increase employee productivity, typically, maintenance engineers, design engineers, supply chain, procurement, those types of folks, to do a better job of sourcing compliance and for part reuse in design. So we'll address each of these. So I literally have a client who, when they acquired another packaging company, the CFO walked down the hall to the CPOs and said, "We just promised our shareholders $500 million in value over the next 24 months, and you get $200 million of it." And he quickly grabbed onto the fact that I'm going to be able to deliver a good chunk of this only if I have a consistent, consolidated view of my material data so I can optimize my supply chain, reduce my inventories, et cetera. So M&A is very much a driver, a history of them. Many of my clients have histories of acquisitions, so they've got the inherited multiple systems, multiple item masters. And realizing these synergies in what you promised your shareholders is going to be key from the materials domains perspective to have that consolidated view. So it helps reduce the risk in what you've promised your shareholders. It increases the ability to reduce the threat of the success of the MORA itself. And so those are one of the key reasons many people will do an item master project like this. The other big driver we see is in ERP consolidations. The analogy is your software is only as good as the data you put in it. And these consolidations are often driven by SOX, upgrades, change of architectures, a desire to have a harmonized view of your ERPs across business units or geographies. And attempting consolidation and then loading funds data after is highly risky, because what you'll end up doing is contaminating your item master, and then when you go redo it, you're going to have to reset it up in your ERP system, and that just adds a lot of cost and risk. The third big driver is inventory visibility. Many of our clients realize that they've got bloated inventory systems, and they've got their data elements spread across multiple systems and is fragmented, and they have difficulty finding the right part at the right time. That leads to things like over-purchasing. I couldn't find it. False stockouts when I have unplanned equipment down. I have the part in stock, but I can't find it because it's poorly described. Unnecessary inventory write-offs from that bloated inventory, and unnecessary disruptions in the manufacturing operations. The next area we see is spend management. Almost all of my clients have done some level of spend management, typically at a higher bucket level, where they may roll up something like supply chain, but they don't know how many 100 horsepower J-frame explosion-proof 1800 RPM motors they buy that are 230 volts. So that's the difference, and to get the huge savings potential of getting a consolidated view across multiple business units or geographies, and then to be able to slice and dice that down to a granular level has proved to be a great area of value for a lot of companies that we work with. So poorly described material items can also lead to a lack of availability and an inefficient buying process. We see it quite often where between the maintenance engineer, the stock room, and the procurement agent, what is actually ordered at the end of the day isn't what was originally requested. And it's because it was an incomplete description or poorly described on the initial requisition. So that leads to, can lead to extended downtimes, it can lead to delays, it can lead to obvious inefficiencies, and that's what we strive to avoid by having that accurate description up front. And decreased employee productivity. Aberdeen Group will tell you that your average maintenance engineer is spending 60% of their time identifying and looking for MRO parts. That's a tremendous burden. Anything that you can do to help promote that search, find, and compare and drive that percentage of their time, basically not driving value, is a big value to your organization. So the idea there is that by having that clean, consistent, taxonomy and description, they're much more easily able to find the part they're looking for. Sourcing. One of the things that we see is, companies will have a tremendous amount of their spend under contract, but they don't fulfill the level of that spend to that contract as they'd like. So by knowing what already exists, they're able to better promote things like make versus buy, get more spend on contract, reduce supplier proliferation and part proliferation, and better leverage their existing contracts. Now, from a design perspective, we often see that if a part is difficult to find, that an engineer will either redesign a new one or request a new commercial off-the-shelf container. So these have lasting impacts because, it depends on the length of your product life cycle, but you're going to be maintaining that part for the rest of that product's life. And in some cases, that can be tens of years. So the impacts of introducing a new material into a design can have long-term and expensive impacts. So being able to provide easy-to-use, completely classified, attribute-rich data to allow them to find that right part up front is key to reducing your parts proliferation in design. So we're going to talk about the business case. So those were some of the issues around why you do it. Now, what's that really mean? In many organizations, we see, particularly in the MRO world, that it's an area that has been not paid as much attention to as in the production side, often compounded by the fact that there's many more SKU numbers. The spend is maybe only 15 or 20% of the total, but the proliferation of the problem over time becomes such that it becomes a large value area. So, one of the reasons that they do this is a quicker ROI realization from ERP investments. So getting the data clean will help promote that. Increased leverage of existing systems, and many clients of mine say, look, I just bought a new system. We don't have an appetite to buy more software. I said, well, did you clean the data up when you put in that software? And they're like, well, no, we just ported it over through ETL. And, then we start walking through the numbers, and they realize that they've significantly compromised their ERP ROI by not leveraging a clean data set. So even after you've already done it, even though it's not a best practice, if your data is toxic in your existing system, one of the biggest ways you can deliver ROI is to fix that problem. Want to drive increased contract compliance, get more of that spend on contract. Gartner will tell you for every procurement you make off contract, you're spending an uplift of 18%. So if you have $1 billion in spend and you can get another 50, 100 million on contract, it turns into big numbers very quickly. Spend leverage through supplier consolidation with a granular view of your data. You can do that. You can optimize inventory at a global level. Reduce identifying duplicates in your inventory and reducing them through burn down. You're going to reduce your carrying costs. By having parts available, easy to find, you're going to increase your plant uptime. You're going to increase worker productivity by having easy to use, accurate search, find, and compare. And from a parts reuse perspective, you can reduce the mean time to deliver new products by not reinventing the wheel. Interesting number, 1/3 of hard dollar savings from an ERP consolidation comes through optimizing your materials and harmonizing them and maintaining them on an ongoing basis. From Gartner, they say that's 1/3 of the ERP consolidation value. So that's something to think about if you're looking at an ERP upgrade, or if you're looking at an ERP system you have that the data has not been cleansed in. So to drill into this in a little bit more detail, supporting better inventory analysis, be it ABC or XYZ, by commodity priority or by demand, and having that clean, enriched data is going to allow you to free up cash flow. And what CFO doesn't want more working capital? You're going to increase your supply chain fulfillment and create a faster and more efficient supply chain. You're going to have more efficient requisitioning because people will be finding parts that already exist, and that's a known source of supply, and that's going to make it much more efficient and accurate, and it'll promote superior relationships among your partners in supply chain network. By using an automated, accelerated, accurate, and granular harmonization process, you're going to have faster ROI, faster deployment for ERP and asset management softwares. You're going to promote enterprise-wide standards adaptation, which will promote more rigorous and superior analytics. And it'll promote faster turn in an M&A situation for shareholder value. In terms of increasing plant and equipment availability and reducing downtime, we find our clients have better operational efficiency by having preferred parts readily available. The employee productivity goes up. You get an overall equipment effectiveness that goes up, often a measure that many of my clients are very concerned with. One of the drivers we see quite frequently is also SOX compliance. So it's difficult to count your assets if you don't have visibility to them, and difficult to report fiscally against that. So by providing that granular unified view, we help promote superior corporate governance. And again, with the capability to comprehensively aggregate financial data, you're going to get superior financial reporting, visibility into corporate spending, and you're going to better comply with the SEC. So let's talk about MRO inventory control, which is one of the major benefits you'll see in a material master data management project. First off, the cost drivers. The maintenance represents, somewhere between 15 and 40% of the total product cost in most organizations. So, cost avoidance for that is huge. And interestingly, any dollar you save in that maintenance world, it goes right to the bottom line, whereas it's typically about a 1-to-3 ratio of how much more sales you'd have to increase to get that same level of savings. So clearly falling to the bottom line can make it a priority. With regards to bloated inventories, we often see 15–20%. I actually have one client that has 70% of their inventory holdings is in consumables, and through a series of acquisitions, they have found that they now have 40% duplication in that. That's a high number. We don't always see it that high, but obviously good inventory control enables you to take advantage of a lower inventory value, lower carrying costs, maintain or increase your service levels, as well as promote lower material costs and overall reduction in total inventory. So let's get right into the business piece of this. First, we're going to take a quick survey again. 45-second delay, and we'll get moving back into the presentation. Just as a way to see what operational areas we're talking to today. Five seconds. Excellent. We'll have the results in just a moment. Okay, it looks like about a little over a third of you are in IT. A little less than a third of you are in procurement. Another third is in operations, and a small percentage in finance. So that's great. Those are typically the type of people that we like to talk to, because those are the areas that we impact the most. That oh, that's it. Those are the ones. Okay, getting into the business benefit calculator. These are some of the areas that our clients have shared with us that they look at in terms of how they determine their ROI for a MMDM project. So this one's looking at cost avoidance. So if I have an annual turn of 100 million in inventory, and the percentage of the time I'm buying stuff that's already in stock because I couldn't find it is 5%, I can reduce that. I can realize a savings of $5 million, and the associated overhead I'd save would be almost another $500,000. And of course, the overhead numbers and whatnot would be based on your own organization's realization of those numbers. So in terms of inventory holding cost reduction, if the actual inventory I'm holding is $50 million and I have an inventory reduction capability through, say, duplicate identification of 3.5%, I can look at an estimated one-time inventory reduction, in this case, of almost $2 million. And again, there's an eliminated overhead charge there. In this case, this company used 18% as their inventory overhead. And that realizes another $300,000 in savings, which is a savings they're going to incur year over year. So it's not a one-time savings. That one keeps reoccurring. So stockouts, I should say false stockouts, and the related downtime. So if I have 52, this company had 52 stockouts a year, and the amount of time they spent not being able to find parts added an hour to the outage, and that hour per outage averaged $200,000, they were getting a total cost of materials-related downtime of about $10 million. So by having clean, consistent data, they estimated they were going to be able to reduce that hour of lost time looking for parts by 50% at least, which is going to show them a savings of about $5 million. And the next area that for benefits calculation is productivity of your personnel. So, this is a small number. I mean, as you saw earlier, 60% of their time was spent looking for parts and identifying parts. This client used a conservative number of 12%. They had 100 engineers, so that related to 160,000 man hours. Of that was wasted 19,000 at an average labor rate of $1.25. They saw the potential savings if they could eliminate that 12% of over $2 million through personal productivity. So in this client's example, they quantified a fairly conservative $13 million ROI over I think it was a 24-month period for them to realize it for the MMDM project that they took on. So in terms of Verdantas, and just kind of the experience we bring to the table, here's a typical client, a good size, a global provider of commercial scale water treatment systems. They had grown through acquisition, and they were undergoing an ERP consolidation. Again, one of the key drivers for an MMDM project. Want to get that clean data into the ERP system. It was a fairly beefy project. They had 18 different legacy business platforms. They had 1.3 million active materials. The data came to us in 23 different languages. They had no existing part classification or description templates, so their data was all over the place. And they had acquired many similar companies, so they had duplicates within and across the legacy systems. So we processed that data in about 11 months. We provided back consistent and actionable information that they were able to immediately use for driving value in spend and supply management, in part standardization for a lean inventory. And they also contracted with us for data governance for our integrity platform. And so we were able to span those systems while they're doing their consolidation, which was a 5-year project. And they were able to get that single version of the truth around their granular material master in our integrity tool, so they could have enterprise visibility across the 18 different systems, and extend sources of supply, enabled centralized maintenance and change management, and brought tremendous efficiencies to how they were maintaining and keeping their data clean. So real dollar benefits example from another client of mine, it was a steel manufacturer. They had about $8 billion in annual revenue. They had a fairly beefy MRO spend of $1 billion a year, and they carried $400 million in inventory on their books. Post project, they had 400,000 items in their system, and as a result of the harmonization, we're immediately able to deduplicate the database and by about 10% to bring it down to 340,000 unique items, and that was a reduction in total SKUs as well. So to quantify it, what they did is they looked at their carrying cost and the reductions factored out of capital as a write-down that went right to the bottom line. So of that $400 million with a $10% duplicate identification, and that equated to $40 million in duplicate inventory value, they were looking at a write-down of about $1.7 million right off the bat. So the other area that they looked at was aggregation of demands. So being able to take 15% of that identified as similar or duplicate across 10% of the supplier base, that equates to $150 million in addressable spend. And what they saw is that they could get about a 12.5% reduction by aggregating demands across their supply base, and that turned into an additional $18 million in savings. So the total data cleansing savings for this client was close to $20 million. Now, with regards to spend, a Maverick spend, buying off contract, they quantified this as well, that they had 80% of their $1 billion under contract. However, about $600 million of that was actually being spent on contract. So they were able to identify that by reducing Maverick spend from 40% to 25%, they could impact $120 million in contracted spending. They calculated the penalty for buying off contract was 16.5%. Gartner will tell you that's closer to 18%. So their cost reductions by increasing spend compliance by 15% is almost another $20 million. So their total net cost reductions they were looking at is close to $40 million for an $8 billion company. So I'll summarize with just hitting some highlights about Verdantas. We've been doing this for 12 years. It's all we do. We are a materials master data domain specific application and service provider. We have experts in our materials group. Our SMEs have have less than 8 years of plant experience, and we've got a team of them. So we can provide harmonization services turnkey. That is where you send us the data, and we send it back to you under an SLA for the load into the system of your choice. The second way we can engage in harmonization is we've productized the platform, and we license it to our clients, and they tell us it's about a 10x force multiplier over traditional ETL merge and match type approaches. We deploy our solutions in a SaaS model, so we use Amazon hosting services, and both our Harmonize and Integrity tool would be hosted there when used by our clients. We have developed as automated to the edge of automation as you can by developing 4 kernels of technology that are proprietary to us that use rules, algorithms, and we've embedded artificial intelligence. So the tool gets smarter the more you run through it. We've run 100 million materials through it to date. So we've already come pre-configured out of the box to know a lot about your typical materials. We've got 3,700 specification templates that define your commodities out of the box. They're readily configurable to any unique requirements that you may have. We're ready out of the box to programmatically assign UNSPSC, PIDEX, E-Class, EOTD, or any custom codes we can programmatically set up in our system to be assigned. Our classification engine runs at hundreds of thousands an hour, and our attribution engine runs at tens of thousands an hour. So this is how we're able to help accelerate the data harmonization process. And again, we provide it under an SLA, so we QA it as well, not just machine-based. And then from an ongoing tool, we've had integrity in the marketplace for 8 years now. It's in its 15th major revision. We have clients who've bolted on top of multiple systems. Got one client that has about 7,000 end users where they do their search, find, and compare. We've designed the tool to be extremely easy to use. We've designed it with the maintenance engineer in mind, people who wear gloves all day, that when they walk up to the system, they have to be fast and effective with it. So just by way of example, your typical end user of our integrity tool in terms of training needs about 30, 40 minutes. It's how you maintain the business rules of any new material request going forward. It's how you prevent any duplicate materials from being entered into your system. It's how you support the ongoing journey of master data management with a minimum of expense and resource on your side. One of the things that we will do for our clients who secure both the Harmonize and Integrity is we'll take all the learnings that we've gotten through the Harmonize process, any kind of unique taxonomy requirements, data dictionary requirements, values, spec sheets, any unique abbreviations, and we'll embed that all into the data validation engine in Integrity, so that Integrity will reflect all those learnings of the client's specific requirements. And we can automate many of the processes in Integrity as well, such that once you define a noun modifier, we can automatically assign you an SPSC. We can automatically assign an SAP material code. So we're reducing the level of data input by the end user or the data steward, and we're making sure that we're eliminating as much of the human error process as possible. So that concludes my presentation. If you'd like further information, please take note of the email address and phone number on the screen now. And we would be happy to follow up with you in the event you'd like to learn more or get a demonstration, talk about your particular requirements, etc. And it's been my pleasure to give you this presentation. What I'll do now is I'll check out the questions. Okay, great. I've got one here. There's a lot of pressure on us for cutting costs. In such a scenario, how can I make a case for a new software to my management? Well, I think this presentation would be a good start. But what we've got is we've got a ROI white paper and a template that you can use to estimate your own savings that we've compiled from our clients that talk about the buckets of value that we just talked about in this presentation. I'd be happy to send it to you. Just ping that info line and review it with you, and it'll give you a ballpark of what the potential for your project is. Because nobody's going to buy anything in a cutting cost scenario without a compelling ROI. Okay, here's another one. We might opt for a new ERP solution in the near future. Should we implement MDM now or once the new system is in place? Well, from our perspective, our solutions are ERP, asset management software, PLM agnostic, and we are quick to provide demonstrable value. So I tell people it's going to be a lot more cost effective, which it will be, and drive value sooner if you clean your data before you go into ERP. And you know what some of our clients have done, and that example I showed earlier, is they've cleansed their data, hosted it in our integrity tool, and then when their ERP is ready, they load the data into their ERP system. Okay, let me get to the next one. Can you help with quantifying our existing data problems? As a matter of fact, we can. What we typically do as part of our sales methodology of engaging clients is we first want to, have some discovery with you about your current environment. And then what we'd like to do is do what we call a proof of concept. And that's where we get a sample of your data, and then we run it through our harmonization process. And that gives us a good sense of your current state of your data and gives you a good understanding of what the outcome could be with a harmonization project. So that'd be something we'd be very happy to talk with you about. So just again, ping the info line or call that number, and we'll be happy to walk you through the process and begin the discovery. Here's the next one. Verdantas is a domain specialist in material MDM. We had gone through this process before, but did not see any good results. Well, I would have to be more familiar with what process you went through, but I know from many of my clients who said they've cleansed their data, what it really amounted to was an ETL merge and match up, where they really didn't separate the attribution, normalize the attribution, and recompile the descriptions while enriching the data. So assuming that was not the process that you went through, I would say that it was probably a traditional ETL transfer without a lot of intensity to the data rectification. So I would be welcome to explore with you the previous process you went through to see if there's an area for improvement that would drive significant value for you. So I would encourage you to reach out with us on that. With the regulatory next question. With the regulatory environment in flux and more regulations anticipated, is it advisable to go with an investment such as MDM? Well, I think that was one of the bullets we started to address in the business drivers. Is one of the benefits my clients seem to be deriving is having this unified view of their materials and being able to pin that onto asset value and spend gives them more readily available reporting capabilities to be more compliant with regulations. So I would say that MDM can be a tool in your toolbox that will help you adhere to these anticipated regulations. The next question I have is, do we have consultants in Ohio? The answer to that is no, but we can put them there. We support worldwide companies, and we do that by airplane. So InBev is a client of ours. I had three trips with my guys into China this year. That's not a problem. We have multi-clients out of Europe, out of North America that are global. I've got clients like Siam Cement out of Taiwan. So geography isn't an issue as long as we don't have to wear protective armor. But we'll go there. So be happy to talk with you about your requirements for Ohio. Just give me a shout. Let's see, do we have any other questions? This one I addressed for Harmonize. The question is, what's the training look like for Harmonize and Integrity? For Harmonize, like I said, we do both turnkey, and in that case, there would be no training because we'd be driving the tool with our own SMEs. With the self-service where we license it to you, the process looks similar in the initial stages in that we would profile your data, we would have a meeting with you to understand, any taxonomy requirements, et cetera, unit of measure requirements. We would configure the tool for you, and then we would train you in how to use it using samples of your own data. So that process, we look for the power users on the Harmonize tool who are going to be, the primary SMEs driving the tool. We spend a week on site certifying them in the tool, and then we support them through traditional software support type approach, right? So we really get them up and running as part of the training process against their own data in their own taxonomy, against their own class structures. For integrity, it depends on the user. As I think I may have mentioned earlier, the end user, it's a 30-minute, 40-minute WebEx for the search, find, and compare. For the data stewards and the system administrators, you're looking at more like a day and a half of training for those types of users. A system admin could go 2 days in terms of getting them up to speed. They have to know more than the data stewards do. So I hope that answered your question. Similar question. We cleansed our data 5 years back, but saw no gains from it. So again, I'd have to understand what you did at that point in time, but part of it is also what did you do to try to get gains from it, right? Was it just that the data was bad, or it didn't come out, standardized, normalized, attributed, rationalized, and enriched? Or was it that the organization didn't execute programs against leveraging that data? So I'm going to assume it was that the data was unsatisfactory, in which case my previous answer stands, is that we'd want to understand more about your current data state. And to the earlier question about quantifying the existing data problems, that's the kind of process we'd want to walk through with you, understand scope, existing data state, and see what kind of value might come out of another project with Verdantas. So that would be, again, reach out to us, and we'd be happy to walk through it with you. Okay, if I don't see any new questions coming in, please do reach out to us if you'd like further information and just like to bounce ideas off us or go into a POC type scenario. That's what we're here for. So I really appreciate your time today. If you'd like a copy of this presentation, just let us know. I'd be happy to send it to you. And I hope you have a great day, and I thank you so much for your time. Bye now.